Welcome. And it is summer, and my vacation will be the month of July, and as you can see, I'm already dressed to go. Welcome to the Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Augusta. Our opening words are from Richard Gilbert. We meet on holy ground, for that place is holy where lives touch, love moves, hope stirs. May our souls capture this treasured time. May our spirits celebrate our meeting in this time and in this space, for we meet on holy ground. Our opening hymn is hymn number 16, Simple Gifts.
'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
Principles to live by. Our third principle. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
For our joys and sorrows, I'd like to drop the first stone for everyone in our country. We're going through a nightmare. And whether you're right or left or in the middle, we all need some mercy now. For everyone in the congregation, hanging out in their house and doing the best they can in what seems to be an endless situation. And we have one sorrow from Cassandra Harris. And it's a hard one. Her daughter-in-law, with whom she's very close, has a brother who just died by suicide. And I've experienced that maybe 6 or 7 times among members of the churches I serve. And It's one of the hardest things there is. So our heart goes out to Cassandra. And for all the joys and sorrows, the last stone unspoken in this congregation. And why don't we include the whole world as well? Because we're all on this planet together. Whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do the good work of this congregation. The offering will now be received online, and if you wish to give to the church, the link will be on your screen. Please join me in a moment of meditation and silence. The spoken words are Mary Oliver's poem, Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. The summer solstice was June 20th. It's the longest day of the year. But my summer wish for you, which is the title of the sermon, is more than abundant sunshine and fun. And to give you a clue of what I have in mind, I like to open with a book called Tuesdays with Morrie. It was popular some years ago. It's called An Old Man, a Young Man, and Life's Greatest Lesson. Mitch Albom is the author. Morrie was Mitch's favorite professor. And Mitch found out that Morrie was dying. And so he would visit with Maury on Tuesdays. And he wrote a book about it. And I'd like to share this from the book. The truth is, Mitch, he said, is Maury, once you learn how to die, you learn how to live. I nodded. I'm going to say it again, he said. Once you learn how to die, you learn how to live. He smiled, and I realized what he was doing. He was making sure I absorbed this point without embarrassing me by asking. It was part of what made him a good teacher. Did you think much about death before you got sick? I asked him. No, Maury smiled. I was like everyone else. I once told a friend of mine in a moment of exuberance, I'm going to be the healthiest old man you ever met. How old were you? In my 60s? So you were optimistic. Why not? Like I said, no one really believes they're going to die. But everyone knows someone who has died, I said. Why is it so hard to think about dying? Because, Maury continued, most of us walk around as if we're sleepwalking. We really don't experience the world fully because we're half asleep, doing things we automatically think we have to do. And facing death changes all that. Oh yes, you strip away all that stuff and you focus on the essentials. When you realize you're going to die, you see everything much differently. He sighed. Learn how to die, and you learn how to live. I noticed that he quivered now when he moved his hands. His glasses hung around his neck, and when he lifted them to his eyes, they slid around his temples, as if he were trying to put them on someone else in the dark. I reached over to help guide them onto his ears. Thank you, Maury whispered. He smiled when my hand brushed up against his hand. The slightest human contact was immense joy. Mitch, can I tell you something? Of course, I said. You might not like it. Why not? Well, the truth is, if you really listen to that bird on your shoulder, if you accept that you can die at any time, then you might not be as ambitious as you are. And Mitch is very successful in business. And Mitch, I forced a small grin. The things you spend so much time on, all this work you do, might not seem as important. You might have to make room for some more spiritual things. Spiritual things? You hate that word, don't you? Spiritual. You think it's touchy-feely stuff. Well, I said. He tried to wink, a bad try, and I broke down and laughed. Mitch, he said, laughing along, even I don't know what spiritual development really means, but I do know we're deficient in some way. We are too involved in materialistic things, and they don't satisfy us. The loving relationships we have, the universe around us, we take these things for granted. He nodded toward the window with the sunshine streaming in. You see that? You can go out there outside any time. You can run up and down the block and go crazy. I can't do that. I can't go out. I can't run. I can't be out there without fear of getting sick. But you know what? I appreciate that window more than you do. Appreciate it? Yes. I look out that window every day. I notice the change in the trees, how strong the wind is blowing. It's as if I see time actually passing through that window pane, because I know my time is almost done. I am drawn to nature like I'm seeing it for the first time. He stopped, and for a moment we just looked out the window. I tried to see what he saw. I tried to see time and seasons, my life passing in slow motion. Maury dropped his head slightly and curled it towards his shoulders. It is today, little bird, he said. It is today. The slower pace of summer is a unique opportunity to make connections, between our thoughts and our feelings, to get distance on the compulsions that drive us, to discover meaning, to learn more richly who we are, what we do, how we in the world are getting along, and where we are in our inner journey. Summer is for deepening. All of us, one way or another, yearn to deepen our lives, to live more fully and more consciously, to feel more intensely, to know with more clarity, to love with more passion. I suspect that such yearning can only be fed if we relinquish our busyness, if we create interior space in our lives. In the ancient scripture of the Chinese religion Taoism, we find these words of Lao Tzu. 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the center hole that makes it useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. Cut doors and windows for a room. It is the holes that make it useful. Therefore, profit comes from what is there, usefulness from what is not there. Usefulness is apparently different from profit, a distinction that passes us by these days. But our usefulness to ourselves and to others requires space in our lives, interior space. A room with no door or window is called a tomb. I leave the completion of the analogy to your imaginations. Perhaps I need to be more clear about what I mean by interior space in our lives. First of all of us need timeouts from stress. Our bodies cry out, "Give us a break before we break." Well, television can provide such an outlet, although I think books and films do a much better job of it. Music is my first choice. Laughter helps immensely, and so do vacations, if we do them right and don't plan them in such a way that they increase the stress in our lives. Such breathers are only the first step. They keep us going by bleeding off the toxicity we have ingested. But the idea of interior space in our lives takes us into deeper dimensions, not all of which we are comfortable, but all of which are significant. In order to explain, allow me to share a story about the Hebrew prophet Elijah. Elijah had been a highly successful prophet. He had foretold that God would punish Israel with drought because they had been worshiping idols. God and he had defeated the priests of Baal in a divine fire-making contest. But then he became obsessively, irrationally fearful for his own safety. It was as if his own success, he could finally allow himself to feel the terrors that his zeal and righteousness had kept hidden from his heart during all his confrontations with the king and queen and the foreign gods. Perhaps he was beginning to wonder about the difference between profit and usefulness. Perhaps he was hiding from his feelings of remorse for killing the priest of Baal. He did what holy people so often do when they need clarification of their role. He traveled in the wilderness for 40 days until he came to the mountain of God. There he hid himself in a cave, and while he was in the cave, the voice of God said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah? Come out and stand before me on the mountain." So Elijah came out of the cave and stood on the side of the mountain. A tremendous wind came up, and Elijah braced himself. But God was not in the wind. Then a firestorm hurled at him, and he recoiled. But God was not in the fire. This was followed by an earthquake, and poor Elijah feared falling down the mountainside. but God was not in the earthquake. Then a still small voice that seemed to come from somewhere inside him whispered the question again. What are you doing here, Elisha? The question, of course, applies to all of us. What are we doing here on this planet? However, there's something we should know. We don't ever hear the voice inside asking the question until we go into the cave, take time out, close ourselves off from the distractions of everyday busyness. We have to go on vacation. That is, become vacant. Turn off the trouble machine and give ourselves the time and space to recreating ourselves. Satchel Paige used to say that sometimes he would sit and think, and sometimes he would just sit. I also like the image in Andrew Marvell's poem, The Garden, annihilating all that's made to a green thought in a green shade. This requires a garden or wilderness, any open green space where the small, still voice can be heard, asking its perennial question, what are you doing here? The question is not a demand that we justify our lives, but that we develop an awareness of them. Sometimes it's helpful to translate it to another question. What lesson in life am I learning these days? Sometimes we learn lessons we'd rather not learn. My brother Jeff, this is a story about my brother Jeff, who's high function, mentally retarded. It's an old diagnosis. And there was someone calling our phone and filling up the tape, and we just would erase it and ignore it. Well, I answered it, and it was the wife of a man who was a financial exploiter trying to drain my brother of his trust fund that my father had left him. When I found this out, I just didn't know what to do. I fell apart. And I went to my wife, Jan, for counsel. But I was already a wreck. I mean, a complete wreck. I couldn't be reasoned with. What am I going to do? I'm just a minister. I don't have the finances to save him from his... So I staggered outside to sit alone in our backyard. And the reason we bought the house is because the backyard has a tall hill that goes up with ivy and lots of trees. So it's kind of a sanctuary. It was my green thought in a green shade. I had to go to our backyard and sit under the shade of the green trees, to be alone with myself, to sort myself out. You see, our backyard was my sanctuary, where I could hear the still small voice inside, asking its perennial question, what are you doing here? What lesson in life are you learning? Well, I was learning to see the world as it really is, to open my eyes, to stop being so naive. I was learning humility. And I realized what a huge job I had before me with my brother and could ill afford to be stressed out. I also learned a bit more clearly that we must allow ourselves to get in touch with heavy kinds of stuff once in a while. We should not avoid them. We do this in order to learn the dimensions of our souls, to figure out what matters most, to learn where we are in our life's inner journey, to feed that yearning for depth. The slow days of summer offer a unique opportunity, time to go deeper into ourselves and find out more about who we are and what we're doing here. to hear the still small voice inside. It begins when we can let ourselves become part of a green thought in a green shade. This is my summer wish for you. Cut doors and windows for a room. It is the holes that make it useful. Therefore, profit comes from what is there, usefulness for what is not there. Make interior space in your life so you may learn your usefulness. Amen, and blessed be. Our closing hymn is hymn 100, and it's verses 1 through 3 only.
I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul.
Our closing words are from our own Ralph Waldo Emerson. Our life is an apprenticeship to truth, that around every circle another can be drawn. And there is no end in nature, but every end is a beginning. And under every deep, a lower deep opens.